And he expected Bitcoin to be going up in price, so he'd look like a genius, and people would be more forgiving of what happened.
Hello everyone. Today our guest is Jimmy Song. Jimmy Song is a Bitcoin developer, educator, and entrepreneur. He's a programmer with over 20 years experience, an open source contributor to many different Bitcoin projects, and the author of Programming Bitcoin, from O'Reilly, The Little Bitcoin Book, Thank God for Bitcoin and Be Itcoin, and The American Dream. In this video, Jimmy Song talks about his recent visit of El Salvador, their Bitcoin implementation situation, shallow fiat-based education system, future of Bitcoin, and much more. If you enjoy this highlight videos, please kindly subscribe and help share this video for us to share more of this valuable content. Thank you. For months now, everybody's been screaming that El Salvador's Bitcoin as currency experiment will bring the country's economy down in ruins. Now Morgan Stanley has called time out, arguing that even if the Central American nation does default, at 28 cents on the dollar, 2027 Salvadoran bonds are too good a bargain to pass up, Bloomberg reported. After the International Monetary Fund refused to continue discussing a loan, the Central American nation needs to pay off an $8 billion Eurobond payment coming due at the beginning of 2023 until the law making Bitcoin legal tender alongside the US dollar is rescinded. Worry started growing about a default. Factoring in concerns about the opacity of President Nayib Bukel's Bitcoin buying program, no one's even sure if he was joking about buying them on his mobile, and there's certainly no information about custody arrangements. Both Moody's and Fitch have pushed the country's sovereign bonds far, far into junk territory. Bitcoin became a legal tender in September 2021, a couple of months before the first cryptocurrency spiked to an all-time high near $69,000. There were plans to issue a $1 billion Bitcoin-backed bond that would be used to build a Bitcoin city on a volcano, beginning with geothermal-powered Bitcoin mining. That has long since been shelved. But the country has not lost money, Vice President Felix Aloa said on July 17, according to Diario El Mundo. Not a penny has been lost, because the government has not sold anything, Aloa said. You lose when you buy at a price and sell at a lower price. The government is committed to maintaining its Bitcoin assets, he added.
This was something that I was telling Max and Stacy. I was there 6 months ago. 6 months. Things have changed. Like you can see things being built and stuff like that. There are like bike lanes there now, which weren't there before. They're like, yeah, they put this in last week. It looks really nice. Everything is brand new, going up, and things are building. And you can just sort of see in the country that there's a lot more energy, a lot more building. And it's what you would expect it to look like if it wasn't bogged down with different forms of oppression, I guess, whether it's the IMF or the M13 gains and stuff like that. So you can kind of see it. As far as Bitcoin goes, you can still pay for stuff in Bitcoin, and it's pretty cool. I think there were a lot of people that sort of expected it to become like a libertarian paradise overnight. It's not quite that fast, but I mean it's becoming something pretty quickly. I was there to train some programmers because, as you know, we need more programmers, and El Salvador needs more programmers. Yeah, it's interesting because like you don't get to see the day-to-day, but when you visit, you can clearly see progress, and that's what I saw. The government is still bullish on it and everything else. They're taking care of some other problems first, namely the gangs. I think they've arrested something like 40,000 gang members, and they're no longer sort of extorting money from like the pupusa vendor or whatever. And that's a very good thing. It's adding more money to people's pockets and getting rid of these sort of like extortionists / rent seekers.
I think it's a very interesting thing that a lot of Western news outlets will try to portray Bukele as this authoritarian leader when in fact it seems like it's just trying to combat corruption in his country. So remains to be seen how things pan out. Let's talk a little bit about just sort of...
Wait. I just want to jump in, though. It's not necessarily that simple, though, right? I mean, he also has said he is the world's coolest dictator, and I think, you know, there are a lot of authoritarian things that he is doing, and he would very publicly say that he's doing.
I don't know if they're like that authoritarian. I mean, putting gang members in prison is not authoritarian per se. I mean, these are people that are going up to like the fruit vendor on the sidewalk and extorting them for half their profits for the day.
And those people absolutely should be, you know, tried and figured out. I mean, I just will say that some of the videos that were coming out, like when that initially was happening, I'm again huge fan of El Salvador. The World Economic Forum is absolutely trying to completely screw them over, and you know, I think there's a lot of amazing stuff that Bukele is doing, but some of those videos that when they first came out around the gangs were seemed chilling. You know, it was like everybody sort of like at their for being forced to crab walk and stuff, and it was weird.
Yeah, they're gonna take like the worst videos and make it seem like that's the norm and stuff like that, and this is the IMF's playbook. You know, there was a whole thing about Pegasus and the journalists and stuff like that. You haven't heard that story anymore, right? The reason why you haven't is because they found out that some of Bukele's government officials also had Pegasus installed on them. There's a lot of propaganda going around, and the IMF is motivated to make them look as bad as possible.
100%.
But that's not what I saw, and you know, like, be careful about like the news that you hear outside of El Salvador, because most of the people that are pushing a particular narrative have an agenda. The Washington Post, New York Times, those places have a total agenda. And it's to influence DC and the lawmakers and keep this narrative of dictator alive, so that when they can, you know, essentially keep exploiting. Because think about it, like El Salvador has been exploited significantly. You know, like like just some of the stuff that I learned, for example. They are only allowed to import beef from their free trade zone, which is like the Central American Free Trade Zone. I think it's El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, and one other country which I can't remember. But those are the only they have a free trade zone. And then but other than that, if they want to import beef, they have to do it from the U.S. So Argentinian beef is great. It's grass-fed, it's delicious, and it's plentiful, and it's cheap. But they can't import it because they have this weird trade deal with the U.S. And the U.S. can have these like very unfair sort of rules around stuff like that, and keep them continuing to be oppressed. And what then are they defaulting on, though? That's the key difference. So if they default on the IMF debt, they actually can kind of afford to do that, because then they can go and raise money using the volcano funds. And that may be the direction that they go in, because IMF loans come with a lot of strings attached. You have to spend money a certain way. You can only put a certain percentage towards infrastructure, for example. And for whatever reason, a lot of the leaders in countries that take IMF loans end up embezzling it. I think it has something to do with the fact that it's money from foreigners, and they don't feel that bad about taking it from foreigners as opposed to their own people or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about you know, stuff like that. It's what you can see on the ground is clearly that they are building. A lot of my friends in the Bitcoin community, like they're thinking, okay, how do I make sure that I leave a legacy so that, like, you know, my Bitcoin turns into, like, you know, a family that has generational wealth. You know, you know, my last name can be like the Rockefellers or something from, you know, 100 years ago. I mean, not like the corrupt parts, but, you know, just the fact that they're able to last and leave legacies and stuff like that. You know, those are things I think are more meaningful, and I don't know. It's not depressing to me, at least.
Fair.
People don't identify with their family so much as maybe the school that they graduated from, and that's more their identity, and it gives sort of like a flavor of what you might believe and so on. And it's very uniform, it's very conformist, it's very sort of statist, and emphasizing compliance to the state, something like that, rather than, I think, a family identity, which is way more based on loyalty and love and, you know, family identity, if you will, which tend to be a lot stronger as an identity, because, you know, you, first of all, you share a lot of genes and stuff like that, so it's there's sort of like a biological component to your identity that's not necessarily there when you're, you know, graduating from a class. It's not like ideological as, or it could be, but, like, you know, there's sort of like a physical biological component to your identity within family that's kind of missing in fiat education. In our sort of like haste to make everything equal, we've kind of removed a lot of meaning, and it's been taken over by the fiat system to essentially make everyone like drones or something, you know, like very compliant cogs in the fiat system. You know, that fiat companies and fiat politics, all of those sort of like are the versions of things that we're supposed to get meaning out of, and really all three of those are very empty. They're mostly around compliance or rent seeking, or you know, getting artificially outraged or something like that, and those are not really good sources of meaning. If you're talking about stuff like universal basic income, well, it's clear who's benefiting, but who's hurting? Well, it's everybody else that gets diluted as a result of all that money that got printed, or the people that got taxed to pay for it. And that's where coercion comes in. You can't give away free stuff unless you take it from somebody else, or you coerce somebody else into providing that service. So that, for me, is the biggest indicator of the march towards the communist socialist way of government. And that's not a happy place to be. And, you know, ask anyone that lived through communism. It's not good in any way, shape, or form. But the actual planes, they don't go faster. They don't, you know, they don't have a larger capacity. They don't, like, it's the same technology, right? Like, and it's we've lost a lot of, and you alluded to this earlier with the petroleum engineers versus the number of people drafted into Major League Baseball. I mean, we're gonna start losing some of the innovative ideas, and like, because there's so much of a brain drain into rent-seeking careers. I mean, most of them are going into Wall Street and being investment bankers instead of Lockheed Martin to improve, you know, jet engines, or to come up with a completely new design that's like much faster and runs on like a different kind of fuel, or, you know, uranium or something. You know, like these are all possible. Just no one's. We're just completely stagnant on those fronts because of fiat money. There's a. And I imagine that's the case for housing as well. There are probably way better ways to do stuff. It's just, you know, the people that are build exactly what they know, and that's it. There isn't sort of like innovation going into that. You're not putting brains towards that. The brains are all going towards, how do I get people to click a few more ads? You know, that's what they're doing. I think this was his move the whole time, was whenever he would be in financial trouble, let's go and do this, right? Like, and he expected Bitcoin to be going up in price, so he'd look like a genius, and, you know, people would be more forgiving of what happened. But he had to sell at a loss, so he looks a little bit more foolish now. But I think this was his plan the whole time, was to dampen the volatility. And in actuality, if you think about like Tesla's stock price versus Bitcoin, I think he actually made out better storing it in Bitcoin than in Tesla stock. So if you think of it that way, like the alternative, I guess, would have been to do like a buyback of the stock or something like that, which would have essentially been that, and it probably would have gone worse. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those rent seekers, I think. Like, if you think about it, he's gotten so many subsidies for his cars and stuff, and I mean, his company's not doing very well. Like without that Bitcoin sale, they would have lost a lot of money. Of course, they also have a lot of money, but yeah, I mean, these are fiat companies. Like it's just kind of crazy.
Bitcoin adoption was supposed to increase tourism, but has not, the Washington Post reported on July 17. The vast majority of guests still prefer to use a credit card or pay in cash, said Daniel Garcia, the owner of a hostel on the Salvadoran coast, said. That contradicts comments made in February by Tourism Minister Morna Valdez, who said Bitcoin adoption had boosted tourism by 30%, El Diario, the Hoy said. But the Post's report does confirm what merchants in San Salvador's central business district and elsewhere have been saying, that there is so little call for crypto payments